Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Arcane Archive presents Cautionary Chronicles. That's right, we're back with another one here for y'all's entertainment and our overall seemingly consistent endeavor to just bludgeon our brains with unmitigated cringe and frustration. To spoiler alert for everybody, today's theme is definitely going to be on the more impotent rage side of things, I would say. Just with the vast majority of all the decisions and things made by these people, these problems, these absolute troglodyte degenerates, it's just, it is a particular brand of individual, we would have to say, that is able and capable of performing all of these incredible feats of disgusting, just aggravating toxicity. But hey, that being the case, though, we guys hope that you like what we're doing here at the Arcane Archive. Please be sure to like and comment down below what you guys think of all the stories we're reading, how rage-inducing or cringe-inducing or sad-inducing that they are. Because, hey, we're here to trauma bond together, and that's what really trauma bond is about. You have to talk, you have to express yourself so that we all connect mutually, so that we know there's at least some hope for this world. Please be sure to share and subscribe to the channel as well. Again, we primarily rely on like word of mouth and other things to promote, so we appreciate any support you can offer us always. And with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and dive right into today, shall we? The first lovely story we have titled for you today is called "My Friend Wants to Play Vidja Games While I Run D&D for Him" by generic alt 666. Heads up as well, most of these that we're going to be reading off the top are going to be relatively short stories, just as a heads up. This basically in session 0, my friend of 5+ years started screen sharing a vidja game on Discord, and I told him off for it because I find it rude. We then had the convo in the image below. I'm green, he's red, we're really good friends and both want to play, so I'm very conflicted about this. The text messages read as follow. OP, fuck you. Like, actually, do not do that. OP's friend, red. Also, yes, I'm gonna play games, but I pay more attention to Discord than any game I'm playing, especially since I'm playing games that are boring as F. i.e. MSC, Timberborn, SnowRunner, Star Trucker, and Grinding in Days, because, I might get back into that game. Green, you're not going to play games while I'm running a D&D game for you. Mad disrespect, bro. Uncool. Red, it would be different if I was playing games of, like, PF or Tarkov, because I get invested. But I pay attention to voice call, though. Also, if it's my turn, I'm going to be on my character sheet. You got to realize, I'm used to a game where combat would take like 2 months of weekly sessions to complete. Green, if we get a problem like that, I'll time turns. But otherwise, I do not want to run a meat grinder. Red, yeah, fair. Again, I don't know what to expect, so I guess I'll adapt shit to what's going on. Green, dude, I want to tell a cool story with my friends, so please do not play vidja games while I'm running a session. Red, like, if I find myself in interactions a lot, I'm not going to do anything. End post. So, what do you feel about this one, Sammy, right off the bat?
Yeah, so like I think it's, I understand what this person is saying. Um
Which
like the
one?
whole
Green or red?
both. I
Okay.
both of them honestly. Like but I think Green being the DM is in the right by default of just I'm asking you not to. Because like there are totally games that you can fuck around with and still pay attention to. Like they use Timberborn as an example, which I've played before. It's a you just build a town with beavers. It's not necessarily something you have to pay attention to, but
Yeah.
it is disrespectful. If they're asking you not to, then don't. It is that simple. Like there's not really like an argument one way or the other. It's just, um, you know, it's like, yeah, just be respectful. I don't,
Especially if he's like your best friend, so to speak. You guys have been friends for 5+ years now. he's running a game for you and you guys are
Yeah,
excited for it. Like,
I wouldn't care if you were it's the streaming it to the Discord call makes it worse.
Like, I mean, here's the thing. I'll even like say like for a game that I was in, we had a player, and I think I maybe told you this, Sam. I don't know if I said it or not before, but we had a player who they apparently got disconnected from the Discord call while we were playing, and they had said that apparently their internet had gone out, and that they were like, they would maybe come back after it came back on potentially. They could have still technically texted or at least like I don't know done something, but because they were still able to text in the chat, like that's what happened. Their internet went out, they left the call, and then they were able to still text in chat. So I think they could still technically have heard us. Like I think they were using like their phone at least. So you could have
Yeah.
still technically joined the call and talked like that, or even just texted, but they didn't. And then a little bit sometime later, we saw that they actually got back on and started playing a video game online that it showed on their Discord. And so it was like, okay, yeah, that's a little bit of a shitty feeling. Like that's, it's like again, on the one hand, it's like, okay, yeah, do your thing. Like if you don't want to be here, then don't be here. Like,
Well,
but
I think there is like I'll be honest with you. Looking at the comments, there's like people talking about how like, oh, in between turns and stuff, like I still pay attention, but I need to be doing something. Otherwise, I won't pay attention at all. It's kind of like when you go and do something, but you're listening to something mindlessly or something's going on in the background, so you're not completely spacing out. Because I struggle with that often,
I
like when I'm
mean,
playing D&D. Like I usually have, maybe I'll have something going that's not like a real time thing, like something that's turn based, where I can just like make a decision and then go back to paying attention. It's not. I don't know. I wouldn't stream it, and like playing
hmm
something that's active, like a shooter or something where you're constantly playing and there's no pause, like that is super super disingenuous. Which this whole like, oh, I'm grinding in DayZ. Well, DayZ is a
it's an
first person
active
shooter.
game. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
like
an
there's
active game
no.
where you're like there. I mean, well, even then, like
I don't think that's fair.
because here's the thing. Sure, if you're in a particular space or moment where like maybe the party has split up and you're all doing kind of separate RP things. Like if you have downtime and the party kind of splits up and you're all going to like your own personal areas and stuff, like I can understand maybe if it's like, okay, it's a little humdrum, it's a little monotonous, and so maybe like your attention kind of shifts, and you can maybe go on your phone a little bit or something, or like read something while the other people are like, doing shit like buying stuff. Like
Yeah.
they're doing a shopping episode, or they're maybe talking to people, and your character wouldn't be there, so they wouldn't necessarily know this information anyway. Like, I'm a little bit more forgiving about that because it's like, yeah, sure, because you're just sitting there for a while. Or even if you're like in combat and you go down really early in the fight, and then you're kind of just sitting there at that point. Like on one hand, it's like nice to be able to like, I guess keep track of maybe offer some advice to your friends if they need it. But at the same time, you're also dead and you can't do anything, or not dead, but unconscious at least, and you can't do anything. And so it's like, okay, sure, maybe you can start doing or engaging in some other activities, but normally it should be something that's like tertiarily aligned with what you're doing so that you're not starting up an entirely other activity while technically partaking in this one. Like this is just straight douchebaggery
Oh, and
here.
it's super
Like
disrespectful. Like just the way that it's like, oh, I'm not doing anything. Like just the way that they're streaming it. Because like low key, if they were doing this by them like and not streaming it and still participating in the game, like who the fuck gives a shit? Who
like
cares? I'm sorry, who gives a fuck? No one. No one cares. But if you're actively playing a game and then you're also streaming it in the chat, why? Just why? There's literally zero reason to do that. I would have been more understanding if the person wasn't actively streaming it in the fucking call. I think that's where I'm like, huh? What are you doing? This doesn't make any fucking sense. The
it's
I
it's
get it,
complete
like
disregard. Like it's
having
just
ADHD or some sort of attention issue, needing to kind of like have something going on so
I
that you don't
mean,
just like go go.
use a fidget spinner then. Get a fidget spinner, get any kind of
Yeah,
other like attention thing where it's like, okay, this is something that I can kind of just do to keep my attention, going or whatever. It's literally things are made
I mean,
for
yeah,
that.
but Adam,
But
if you're playing like an idle game, that's basically a fidget spinner anyway.
I mean, I guess, but it still requires you to actually like turn your attention over there and like fucking do some shit or whatever
That's fair.
instead of literally just you can just mindlessly just instinctually do this. You can just spin this thing. It's something to do with your hands. It keeps you busy without it necessarily actually detracting from your attention or focus on this thing here. And like I said, I'm even understanding because I've been there myself plenty of times too, where it's like nothing is really happening for you to be able to engage with or interact with. And so it's like, you're like, okay, yeah, your attention can wander. Some people might make the argument like, well, you should give the other players respect by paying attention. But it's like, well,
Well, yeah.
sure, absolutely. But there's also a line there too where it's like, okay, but I'm there's only so much that I can do too. Like I'm not involved in this at all. I can't really contribute or engage at all. So I mean, I'm kind of just sitting here. Which that sucks too. Like that's not super fun. And most of the time you want to try and make sure your games don't have those long pauses between players, because that's also where the GM can come into play, right? Where you switch the perspective within a reasonable time frame to be like, hey,
Yeah.
if you did split up, we're doing your thing. Okay, you did this. Okay, cool. You're done. We're gonna switch over real quick uh to this person here. All right, cool. You did your okay. Well, now we're gonna switch over. So that way you can keep engagement relatively fresh and consistent.
Oh, 100%.
Um,
I will say I do kind of get what Red is saying with the I'm not used to a game where I'm used to a game where combat takes 2 months of weekly sessions to complete.
yeah,
Like, because I'm sure it sounds like they were in
that's
some weird
that's a
fucked up
lot.
version
Yeah, that's
of
that's a
D&D
lot. Like
that just
that's
sucks. And it's unfortunate that's what they went through. That isn't necessarily an excuse to be shitty to their friend. I think this ends with the friend asking, "Please don't do that."
yep.
And what it should have happened is, "Oh, my bad. I'm sorry." Like you're more than welcome to explain why that's your behavior. Explain like, "I'm sorry. Like this is what I've always done." But it's just a weird,
Yep.
very strange way of doing it, in my opinion.
Well, other than that, we got unless you got something else you kind of want to lay out for this one, Sammy. I think we probably said all we really can about this. Let's go ahead and move on to the next story of the day. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, next up we have my DM is nerfing my character. Um,
By I Don't Exist 1923.
oh, I feel like we've seen that one before.
I think we've seen the other one before too, maybe. Like I'm not sure if it is just a throwaway account, but I feel like we've seen like generic alt 666 before. But
yeah. I have so I don't play in a so I play in a D&D 5e campaign. My DM made it so it is realistic with stab wounds, damage organs, everything of that sort. And I wanted to play a paladin, and naturally with defense and plate, I had 21 AC, but my DM said that was too overpowered and nerfed it by lowering it to 18 and capping it at 18. So if I casted Shield of Faith or Shield, it wouldn't work. Oh,
yeah, buddy, you're getting started
that's
early. We're getting started real early with
that's
this.
a huge fucking
Yeah,
no-no.
that's a problem.
Um,
That's a big problem right there. Like keep reading, just keep reading, you'll see.
no, 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 I know, I know. That's just fucking insane to me.
Yep.
Is this a red flag? The other player was fine with it because he said, and I quote, "Well, you would have the AC of a dragon." Edit. So
So
I've talked to my
so
DM and found out why. He said, and I quote, "I don't want you to be that powerful at lower levels. At lower level, you're meant to struggle." End quote. So after that, I decided to play a wizard, but my DM has banned divination and war. So after that, I left because divination is my favorite subclass. Yes, it is annoying and powerful, but I'm a wizard with no HP, and I don't think it's that bad. Edit 2. I think it would be fun to name sometimes the massive wound rule came into play before the paladin incident. One time I was stabbed in the knee and had half speed for a couple days. My party member was hit in the shoulder and dislocated it and had disadvantage on all attacks. My wizard was hit in the head really hard, so he had a concussion, so he had disadvantage on all mental checks. And if he wanted to cast a spell, he had to do it a DC 18 con save. And finally, I had a pierced lung and
He
I
had a,
gained four
yeah.
levels of exhaustion.
Yeah, he had a pierced through lung and then gained 4 levels of exhaustion from it.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right,
so right off
all
the
right.
bat, again, we've said it before, we'll keep saying it. Like I feel like we're almost compelled to put at least one of these in every video we do of Cautionary Chronicles. Difficulty doesn't automatically mean better,
Well,
okay?
yeah, it doesn't. Although I have no problem with it. What do they call them? What's the table in
Injury
5e?
tables or whatever.
It's
Like,
like something wound table, vicious wounds or something like that. I don't know.
yeah, whatever.
Um, I have no problem with the concept. Um, but like a critical wounds, it's critical wounds. That's what I was thinking of. But the reality is, uh, first of all, if they're level 3, right? Or they're low
Uh,
level. So
he
first of
says
all,
low level. Yeah, they haven't
let's just
actually said
I'm gonna
what
put it
level
out
they
here. I'm gonna put
are.
it out here right now. He would not have started with plate, so he's already wrong. You start with chainmail. In every class that wears heavy armor, you do not start with plate mail. So
Sure.
you start with chainmail and a shield. Is chainmail 16? So with a shield, it's 18.
I mean, he never necessarily said that they were starting with plate.
But he said you're
Like,
low level. So even if
yeah,
you're
but the thing being though is he gave him plate.
That's what I'm but
Like,
like you shouldn't have. The reality is like I've played like a lot like low level starting characters where it's like we're level 5 and they're like I want plate mail. And I'm like no. Plate mail's plate mail's expensive. Are you gonna have that kind of gold? We're starting at level 3. You're just starting on an adventure. What'd you do before this? And I've never had someone actually be able to convince me that they would have had enough money to purchase plate mail. And the reason I do it is because plate mail is a great thing to get from encounters or as rewards or something like that because it is very powerful. Just as a starting item, as a mundane item, plate mail is huge for any class that is going to be using heavy armor. It's the best one by far.
yeah.
And as much as like 16 to 18 AC is not that much of a difference, it's a huge fucking difference. It's a
Oh
difference to
yeah.
being able to have the same AC with a two-handed weapon and armor as opposed to having a one-handed weapon, a shield and armor. There's a lot of things that can change. So if you're starting at low level, you shouldn't have plate mail. And if he's gonna give you plate mail, why the fuck do you nerf the plate mail?
I mean, that's what I'm
Um,
talking about because it's
and
just like,
also, Shield of Faith is a concentration spell. You're using a shield, so you can't use two-handed weapons, so your damage is lower. Like, there's ways to get around that as well, save spells, things like that. Like a DM that's this fucking
well,
torn and like stuck on AC is a bad DM in my opinion.
well, he's a
Like
bad
this
DM
is
even in terms of his so-called realistic stab wounds, damaged organs, and everything of the sort bullshit. Like this. This is a fantasy game where you have magic and shit that can do all the whatever the fuck. Like this isn't we're not playing like Warhammer, fantasy or 40K where like and you're a guardsman who's just gonna get ripped in half by anything. Like, come on now. Like the whole point is you are a player character who has class levels. That means you're not just a normal ass motherfucker at that point. That's the whole point of that. All right. Classes are not a common thing in any D&D world. At least they shouldn't be. The point is these people, even at level 1, trained quite a bit to get there. They have achieved a certain height and level of power and dedication that they have essentially ascended a level above normalcy. So they're not necessarily going to take the same kind of damage or same kind of whatever. Another huge aspect I think a lot of people misunderstand as well is technically speaking, because they are player characters. And again, I try to explain it in this kind of rule or this kind of example, this kind of scene, right? Everyone at the table are gods, right? The players and the GM, they're all gods, right? The GM is the overgod of this world we are playing in, and the players are visiting gods who are now dropping their avatars down. So the player characters are basically avatars of us gods. They don't play by the same rules as everybody else because they don't have to. That's the point. That's why we get death saves and most others don't. You can, obviously. I personally love the idea of giving your enemies death saves too if they're particularly like powerful or whatever and important or whatever, like especially also with NPCs who are important. Technically, I think in Pathfinder as well, they have it's a literal rule that important NPC or party NPCs and strong enemies also have death saves. But for the most part, most enemies or other beings do not have those because they are not, in a sense, blessed by the gods. So they do not have the same rules of engagement regardless. They're not supposed to. So this kind of punishment where you're like, oh, I got shot by a freaking arrow and I'm going to take all this terrible, horrible damage. And get all these, like, if that's the case, then magic should instantly heal up all that damage anyway because it does. It heals you. So it's like, it doesn't make any sense then. If normal mundane arrows can hurt you to such an extent, magical healing should be able to instantly heal all of that. There should be no problems that you have. It doesn't matter what level of spell you use. It's miraculous and magic. Again, this is where this so-called mindset and logic just falls flat on its face. Where you're trying to be like, I'm just delivering a more realistic version. Bitch, none of this is realistic for the most part. At least not in terms of the rules and laws of the world itself.
No.
You can't have magic and say, oh, this is going to fuck me up. That's just not, it's not how that works.
You can have injuries, just it's not really how it works.
I mean, that's what you can have injuries, but I'm saying, like, again, in this, in terms of making it so severe and bad, where it's just like, or even again, like again, like I said, I always hate it because, and what I specifically hate is this thing that a lot of GMs have about keeping parties low level, because it's shit like this, where it's like, low level, you're supposed to struggle. Low level is fun because I get to do whatever I want to you and you can't do much of anything about it. And you're like, that is a shitty mentality for a GM to have. Your GM should want you to succeed. They should be giving you things to make you more capable, more powerful, stronger. It's good to challenge. Okay, that is absolutely, I will 100% always die on that fucking hill. That challenge is usually great. Maybe not all the time. Sometimes, maybe you do just want to steamroll through some goblins or bandits or something. That's great too. I love that too. I do not mind at all being like, considered overpowered or whatever. But it's also a huge thing where if you can get a legitimate challenge, when you are like, a fair challenge, though, is the operative word. A fair challenge. We are fighting something that's just as equally broken or powerful as you, but in a fair way, where it's like, hey, I've got all this dope, cool shit. They've got dope, cool shit. Let's clash our dope, cool shit and see what happens. And then it comes down to more strategy of how you do it, right? And your application and your ability to apply your abilities at that point. Instead of it just being bullshit like, oh, I'm just being continuously nerfed because I'm too strong. And yet the GM can do whatever the fuck they want, essentially. Like, come on now, bro. Screw that. All right. I think that's about all we can say about that one. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one of the day. This one is titled, One of My Players Ran Off After His Character Died to His Stupidity by Milo Troxich. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, so I butchered the crap out of that. My apologies. So I was running a one-shot for a bunch of first-time players on a summer vacation, and one of my players decided to shoot everything that wasn't from their party. Fun time, starting out strong. So the party was going in a dungeon to help a sheep turn back to their real form after being polymorphed, and everything was going pretty well at that point. Now, in the final room, they fought against the boss, a shape-changing beast, and the sheep was able to get a hold on the artifact that was causing the shape-changing, and they themselves got transformed into a giant constrictor snake. They were, however, able to defeat the beast, but the cleric decided to shoot the friendly snake. I told him that the snake was friendly, and they shot it anyway. The players were able to restrain the cleric, and they left the dungeon. On the outside, the snake/sheep person was finally turned back into their true form, which happened to be a half-orc paladin. After the paladin, rewarded the party, the cleric decided to try and shoot him again because he wanted more loot. The paladin blocked the shot and warned him to not do it thrice, and yet the cleric still decided to shoot the bard instead, one of the few characters who was actually nice in the campaign. The paladin had had enough of his BS and instantly smited him. As he was very damaged from the dungeon already, it knocked him out immediately. However, the paladin, who was lawful good, gave him a bit of lay on hands to prevent him from dying. And after the dungeon, the party headed out into the desert to find a blue dragon wormling. And after a while, the party found the wormling, and the rogue attempted to tame it, HTTYD style. Succeeded, and the cleric shot the wormling. Even though he was also warned by the rogue that if he should try to hurt the dragon, they would kill him. And surprise, surprise, well, the cleric died. The player then just stood up and left the rooms with the words, "shit game." Shortly after we finished the session, as the mood was very low, after we cleaned up and the majority had already left the room, the cleric player turned to me and threatened to throw the summer vacation currency from the rogue player out of the window. Luckily, however, he didn't. Not the best session I had, all things considered. Edit, thanks for the advice. I'm relatively new to D&D, and this was at the moment my third time GMing. End post. What do you think, Sammy?
I mean, fucking... Yeah, I don't know. The top comment says exactly what I needed to say, which is, as the DM, you have the power to say, no, you don't do that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's super... Here's the problem. There's a lot of people that start playing this game and they try to just do whatever they feel like. And there can be rules, like hard and fast set rules of we don't do this. We don't do this. Not, hey, don't do that. We don't do this. It's important the way that you are saying these kinds of things. Telling someone, hey, don't do that at a table, that doesn't really mean anything. You have to be like, no, it's not happening. It's not a, hey, don't do that. It's just like it didn't happen. If you want to try again, I'm gonna ask you to leave the table. There is no, like, you don't have to, what's the word? You don't have to, like, appeal to anyone. As a DM, as a veteran player, as you know, if you're at a table, you've been at for a long time, you have set rules, and someone comes in, whether it's a player that's been at your table or a player that's just joined and is trying to circumvent those rules or push the boundary that you don't want pushed or get in the way, there is no, like, hey, can we not, like, it's just, that didn't happen. If you do it again, you're gone. Like, we've read enough of these stories at this point that honestly, I don't understand trying to work with people anymore at some of these tables, because it's not,
I don't.
like, you're doing that being that way, having that kind of attitude, it ruins the experience for everyone else at the table. It's extremely selfish and childish, and it's unneeded. It's unneeded. If you can't play, like, it's so basic. It's just like it was in fucking elementary school. You know, a bunch of kids play together. If one kid's doing weird shit or not playing by the rules that everyone else is playing by, they just don't play with him. It's that easy. You don't get to play anymore. Like, I know that sounds childish, but, like, that is ostensibly what would solve half of these stories anyway, is no, you do not get to participate now. You have gotten rid of your ability to do that because you are not the one that makes the rules here. Especially in this. Like, if it's a DM doing that shit, you just leave. But this is, like, I mean, because no, this isn't that bad. It should have ended the first time they were like, hey, we don't do that at this table. This is just not how it
I don't understand.
But they couldn't. They just pushed it. And at that point, it's like, all right, you can spend your time doing something else if you want. We're all on vacation. You can go hang out somewhere else if you want to. I'm doing this for fun with my friends. If you don't want to, be cool, then we don't have to continue. And by we, I mean you specifically.
Like, just you.
Like, everyone else seems to be doing just fine, participating like an adult. You haven't seemed to figure that out yet, so you're gone. I don't know. Maybe it's me, but, like, I would be much more mean about it.
I mean, well, especially to the point because he's just being he's clearly just being an absolute dick. He's just being an asshole. Like, literally, even him threatening to throw the summer vacation currency from the rogue player out the window. It's like, Bitch, you know
Dude,
how
that is
utterly
like,
petty and
dude,
immature you have to be? I would
that
beat
is
the
like, I
dog
would,
shit.
yes, please.
I
I
would
would,
beat the dog shit out of you if you wanted to threaten
oh,
some shit like that. I don't care if you're joking. I'd be like, do it, see what happens. Like literally,
yeah.
do
Dude,
it and see.
hand me my money or lose teeth.
Like
Those are the
do it
options
and
you
see
have.
what happens. And the fact that you're doing this, the fact again, same thing. Like people who are like this, who are just like, I'm just gonna shoot everything outside the party for shits and giggles. They're just trying to troll. He's literally a troll. He's just being an asshole. So at that point, he has rescinded any of the social agreement or the social contract to be respectful, nice, and considerate of each other. He has voided that contract at this point. So at that point, all bets are off. Get him the fuck out. I mean, like Sam said, like again, I get it. Like he's brand new, and one thing that I will say is this: the OP does like respond to some of the comments saying like, I was considering it, but I don't like to force my players to do something. Another commenter then replies, so instead you let one player sour the mood for the whole table. What if he decided his character wanted to sexually assault an NPC or other player's character? You are not a neutral adjudicator of rules who can just shrug and hide behind what the rules technically allow when an asshole does his asshole thing. You are a partner in telling the group story with the special privilege and responsibility to stop assholes from doing their asshole thing. You don't not like to force players to do something. You just don't have the confidence and experience to keep players in line or boot them when they cross it. It's okay. It'll come with time. That is beautifully put. This commenter, Nicolangelo 2009, couldn't have said it better, I think, ourselves. Like, that was wonderfully, beautifully put. It's absolutely the case. GMs and anybody aspiring or wanting to be a GM, listen to this man here. That is absolutely what your responsibility is as the GM. The whole point of being a GM is you have all this power, right? It's your game. You decide what goes on. You decide what happens. But with that, with great power comes great responsibility. So you got to be able, you are not a neutral party per se. Like you can be if both parties are like, if it's an in character thing or anything where neither of them are necessarily being assholes, maybe just have differing opinions. At that point, you can be a neutral like adjudicator or an ambassador, so to speak, or a negotiator. But when it's clear that one player is just being an absolute asshole, you are judge, jury, and executioner. Okay? Take that out. Do not stand for that. Do not just pass and be like, well, I don't want to force a character to not like, you know what? Sure. Here's the thing. You don't have to if you want to try to take that route, okay, but then you have to also introduce legitimate consequences for their actions, which you did, the half-orc paladin, but then you also have to have a conversation with the player outside of character, right? That's not going to actually solve anything at the end of the day because stuff like that, behavior like that, it doesn't make sense. It's not logical, right? No character, unless they are absolutely screwed in the head, is going to behave like that realistically or reasonably in the game. It doesn't make sense. So therefore, it is clearly a factor or a problem out of game that needs to be addressed out of game. You're not going to handle the situation in the game because it's not a in-game problem. Really, it's not. It's an out-of-game problem. And so it needs to be handled out of game. And I know that's scary. Confrontation always is. It's uncomfortable, but guess the fuck what? So is this dude doing all kinds of horrendous asshole things as an asshole in your game. That's worse. But with that, unless you have anything else to add on to that, Sammy, let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next story of the day. Go ahead and take it away.
I have it's the metagaming one, correct?
Yeah, DM accuses OP of metagaming.
Yeah, DM accuses OP of metagaming to avoid TPK by Affectionate Rent 400. Now, just a notion at the beginning of this, the OP DM labeling is a bit weird in this story. But work with me here. It can be a curse to have read lore sometimes. My tale is a short one, but admittedly an unavoidable one. So our forever DM wanted to take a break and be a PC for a change. And so the first to step up as a new DM eagerly assumed the role. Apart from the DM and myself, sadly the other PCs are not as relevant as they all took it in stride. So we have a new DM and OP. Not the original DM. That's a different DM. Our setup was fairly normal. A few adventurers meet and form a party. We take our first client, which was the first real red flag. to one way or another remove a black dragon from its lair. Our quest giver was a mysterious man whose face we could not see, by the way, and this is what first tipped me off that this was a trap. I was playing as a ranger who had trust issues due to being driven from his homeland, and I made it clear on session 0 my ranger would join the party but would be sleeping with a knife and his back to the wall at all times. I was going through an edgy phase. But you made it known, so I feel like that's okay. Either way, I
That's
felt
more fair, more acceptable for
yeah, I
certain.
felt it was in character to not trust anyone, and so this was fine, I thought.
That's it. That's already
I
a
mean,
problem. That's already a
I mean,
problem.
we were level 3 and being sent to defenestrate,
Defenestrate.
defenestrate, which is just a fancy word for remove.
Yeah.
A dragon. Come on. So no, I think there's cause here. It makes no sense for them to be going after a dragon at level 3. He doesn't trust the shady dude who gave them the quest. I get all of this is fine. There isn't a
I
I'm
completely
gonna
understand the
like
paranoia. Like
they're not talking he's not talking about, oh, I'm gonna like fight my party members. No, he's just like, I'm gonna sleep with my back to the wall so I can see the whole room.
that's perfectly fine. But
And
there's the thing
a knife in my
about
cloak. Like
I
there's
would
nothing
just be
wrong with
interested to
that.
know exactly if he's again though, that's the thing. A lot of people take that particular trope too far where they are just paranoid or mistrustful of everyone, and it
Sure.
becomes a more conflicting thing all the time. And you're just like, fuck me, dude.
Whether it's
But I agree. It's stupid
unfortunate,
for
whether
the
yeah.
party of level threes to go after any kind of adult or even a young adult black dragon. They could maybe contend with a black wormling. Like if it was a black
Yeah,
dragon
sure.
wormling, they could probably contend with that. But if it's young, if it's any older than that, no, it's ridiculous for them to try and fight any of that shit. That doesn't make any sense.
Luckily that doesn't matter at all
Yeah,
in this story.
unfortunately.
Through some trails, we managed to find the lair. I should note that up to this point, nothing seemed odd in the surrounding area, and even the locals, though fearful of the dragon, did not seem to be suffering, which I noted as odd, as black dragons are pretty cruel things. It's then that we meet the dragon in question. He was rather young black dragon, and a fight was winnable but not easy. We are then faced with a choice of sorts. The dragon is hostile but does not immediately attack, and we have a verbal exchange. I am the only one in the party who opposes fighting and wants to abandon the quest, as I found it all very suspect. For those not familiar, green dragons are a common rival of black dragons, as they favor similar dens. They will also not fully they will not fight black dragons directly, but will either wait for them to die or move on before taking it. They are also masters of manipulation and revel in it. So I surmise that in some way there was a dragon wanting us to clear this place out for him. As we never saw the face of the quest giver, and no locals seemed to be suffering being so close to an evil dragon, and it was younger and weaker than expected, I voted to just turn away because I and my ranger couldn't trust that the green dragon wouldn't swoop in after we won and one-shot us. Well, we were forced to roll initiative, and wouldn't you know, what I predicted happened. We kill the black dragon, and then the green dragon appears, thanks us for being useful pawns, and then wipes us from existence. Though the way the DM had it play out felt more like it was out of spite because I called it. He then rage quit after calling me a metagamer, even though it was made clear that my character trusted no one and was proficient in history, and all my rolls uh, in that, when checked, were good. Admittedly, I shouldn't have used meta knowledge to inform my actions. However, as I stated, my character was quite knowledgeable and highly distrusting,
I was gonna
and the whole
say,
setup was full of red flags that anyone could have spotted.
yeah.
I'm not sure if DM really wanted a TPK, but he was also new to the DM thing. Honestly, the only way I see this having played out better would be me just turning my brain off. I was more used to our forever DM and needing to think in 4 dimensions, given he was so fond of red herrings and the like, so I was overprepared for a first timer. Um,
Hmm.
like
I
so
disagree. Like that, I don't think the OP did anything wrong here
no, that's what I was gonna say. That's why I liked this story.
at all.
I don't think, like, no offense, no offense. I don't think that he did anything wrong here. Um,
No,
First of all,
I don't
and
believe this is
this is
metagaming. I don't
this
believe
is
this
just
is.
me. Someone who's a master of manipulation, like a green dragon, would not be a suspect, weird, shady dealer. Because why? They wouldn't need to. They could assume any form they want. Why wouldn't they just be a normal quest giver?
I mean,
It
that's what
would
I
be
was saying.
better if the green dragon manipulated you guys into having some sort of relationship with the quest giver and then betraying you later down the line once they got everything that they wanted. But in reality, being a shady, no, person in a hood with no face, that's not a master of anything. That's an idiot.
No,
The
no.
DM had no idea what they were doing, and
Well, he clearly wanted to us like I think this is a textbook prime example of the GM wanting to establish some mystery, some
Hmm.
intrigue by obviously making, yeah, you can't see them, but didn't again, even though I assume this guy should have been at least aware of OP's more vast knowledge and awareness of like D&D lore and shit, should have come correct and be like, okay, cool. So we're not gonna go fight a black dragon at level 3. Again, that in of itself is super sus. Doesn't make a lot of sense overall. You made the quest giver already rather suspect. Like clearly they're like, it's a mystery. What's gonna happen? Oh, the big twist at the end. And it's just the fact that OP was smart enough, aware enough, and had the knowledge to be able to deduce what they were already trying to do. Um, Honestly, I completely believe that the GM was probably going to go and maybe just TPK the crap out of them. Like I 100% would believe that he would probably just do that. I like
Yeah.
based off of this and how he even acted, what he said. I think yeah, OP is right in that. I think maybe he was just being petty and was just did it in such a flippant, nonchalant manner because it was
Yeah.
just because to the GM, OP basically ruined it and spoiled it for everybody, and
Yeah,
even for the GM himself. Like,
yeah. It's unfortunate. Like, there's obviously some hurt feelings here, but like at the same time, no offense. Like, I mean, I know you've played smart characters before. Like playing a smart character or a wise character, someone who is in the know about certain things. Like, no offense. I mean, can you tell me that you've never used the fact that me and you have read through a vast
oh,
majority
I've
of the
done
monster
it. I've done
manual?
it plenty. Like if I'm
Like
playing, yeah.
if I should know, if I should know, and I always ask the DM. I always ask the DM because it's easy to come to conclusions by yourself and maybe assume things that aren't there. But like I have trust in my DM that if we're fighting something and my character's background is something to do this. Say like right now I'm playing a ranger paladin that his whole thing is he watches
Ancients,
and
yeah.
scans for portals from other dimensions, mostly abyssal in nature. So my thought would be
You would know about demons.
if I was part of an order of paladins and had extensive ranger training, that I could then surmise that I might have some knowledge about these kinds of creatures. And my both of my DMs that I'm currently playing with would yet definitely say yes. So I would understand that most demons are resistant to elemental stuff, and you can't if you try to fight them without magic weapons, it's not going to go very well for you. That's not that's
It's
not like
not
a bad
metagaming.
that's not a bad thing.
It's not. Again,
No.
that like I would say again, it is always encouraged. Look, there's a huge difference between, like Sam just said, using the knowledge that you have and applying it appropriately to your character. Like that's in fact one of the best ways to play the game because it also fleshes out your world and shows you you're not just, a literal fish out of water in a fucking world. Like you actually have some life and your character it makes your character feel like you have lived here. Like you
Yeah.
are, and it's difference there's a difference between doing that and being like, okay, this monster has like a 21 AC, its breath weapon can deal this amount of damage, and it has like a
Yeah.
cone this wide or this big, or it has this amount of movement speed. And it's like, okay, look, it's also not a good idea to do that because your GM could at any point homebrew shit to change that up anyway. So there's not a lot of point. Like, don't get me wrong. Here's the thing. I think ironically, I will even say, maybe this is a hot take, but I'll even say there's not necessarily anything overtly wrong with memorizing or knowing at least the stat blocks of mini monsters, because it then also does help to catch, again, like I said, it's a bit of a hot take, like I said, everything
Yeah.
within reason, but it also does allow you to potentially catch if there's some fuckery afoot. Because
Yes.
sometimes it's also true that your GM might go a bit far and overly homebrew or fuck with something, or maybe they even messed up on something, right? With
Yeah.
how like a spell works. Right? With like,
Yeah.
oh, you cast a spell that basically fucks your whole party, or you're doing something, you're like, oh, wait, hang on a minute. That's actually not how that works like that. Like, you actually can't cast that spell like with this time. It takes like a minute to cast that spell. That's why it's
Yeah.
so powerful and devastating.
Yeah,
So
I
you
think
can't cast it in a fight. And it's like, so
that
there,
it's a very fine line. Like
there's
I'll
a
say
fine line for
from
sure, but
personal experience, like
same.
I am definitely the player at my Tuesday table that calls out when monsters that I've used or fought before in other games or when I've run them in myself, the abilities, the way that they're using them is not how it's written. And I've called out my DM for it before. Not like, hey,
You
that's
don't,
not how that
I
goes.
mean,
No,
you
I'll be
don't have to
like,
be an asshole.
what I'll do is
Like,
like he'll be like, oh, and you're grappled. You got hit by this attack, you're grappled. I'm like, can you read the wording for me? Because I'm a little bit confused.
because
And he reads it, and sometimes, yeah, sometimes it is
sometimes it's
changed and
right.
homebrewed
Yeah.
because this was originally a monster that was a lower level and they make it harder. Or they read it again, they're like, oh shit, my bad. And that's okay. I think
It's
that's
perfectly
completely
fine.
fine.
Again, because a lot of this
Um,
shit can be a lot and it's very
it's a lot.
specific and
There's
the
lots of
wording
stuff.
can be ambiguous. And so
Yeah.
it's important, I think, for everybody to be able to help each other. Just
Yeah.
to be
It's
specific, and that's what helps make the game better because so many interactions require very specific you know, statuses or conditions to be met to do them. And so
yeah.
if you're like, okay, if this needs to be this, then you need to be pretty clear and specific about what is actually happening
Yeah,
because
there's a lot of information.
that drastically changes how a person can then respond to something that's happened. And so specificity is exceedingly important. And so again, like Sammy said, it's a very fine line and it's difficult, to necessarily there's no one tried or true method, right, to do it. Because you don't want to be ignorant, because if you're ignorant, you have a high chance, exceedingly high chance of being taken advantage of and your entire game experience being fucked and ruined
Yeah.
incredibly so because you just
Now,
didn't know. And then, you don't want to obviously over, metagame to the point where you're kind of essentially cheating or just not fun, where you're just like, yeah, I know what this, the weakness of this, whatever, da 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 is. And it's like, okay, but you never went out, you never fought these monsters before. Like, you're literally a librarian. So
oh
maybe
no,
you like
like
read up on some stuff, but like,
yeah, I
you've
think
never actually fought before. Like,
I will say I do think there is a case to be made in this specific case. I'm all fine with the being paranoid, assuming that the weird quest giver is up to something, but making the jump that it's a green dragon as a level 3 character, I think is a bit high. Like
I mean,
if there's anything I'm
I
going to disagree with
agree.
here, if there's anything I'm going to disagree with here, is that yes, people study dragons, but is there actually a reason? And this is kind of me to the player at this point. If I was DMing this and someone just said, "Oh, it's a green dragon," I'd be like, "Okay, wait, back the fuck up real quick. Is there a
I
case to be made that your character would have any fucking clue? Because yes, you could have studied dragons, but are you going to know the intricacies of chromatic dragon power struggles throughout the ages to that minute of a detail? I don't think so. At level 3, no. Unless your whole character is about killing dragons, which you mentioned nothing about in this. Like if you built a dragon hunting character, that is what they do for a living, yada yada whatever, then fine.
well
But like,
here's
is
what
there
I
a real
will say.
reason?
Here's
It
what
is a
I
little
will
bit
say and
suspect.
why. Like, because normally I would also agree that maybe they wouldn't know that. Although again, it also depends on the character. Because again, if for instance, if you're an elf who's lived hundreds of years and
It's hard. We
you
don't know
you
a lot of
like
details.
like with an elf, you absolutely could have read up on all manner of stuff about dragons and shit. Like about if your character is interested in dragons or just all about anything really, right? If you're a
Mhm.
dwarf or a gnome or any particularly long-lived race, it's like you could realistically say if you're over centuries years old that you probably might have some experience or knowledge of that even at a low level. I will even say though even more so, however, he is a ranger. That is one of the biggest aspects of this that I'm like, okay, I could also
Yeah, you'd have
see
bestiary knowledge, like
he'd, he'd,
100%.
he'd have Bishir, and especially if he also chose dragons as his like favorite enemy or whatever.
Yeah.
He like as especially as a ranger, green and black dragons are dragons he would probably encounter relatively easy, or at the very least, he would read up on and have knowledge of, especially of almost any other dragon. Unless obviously he's like an Arctic Ranger or some shit, whatever. But either way, again, with all those factors in place, I would say it's also understandable why his character could very well know about these types of habits of both green and black dragons. Because, well, for one, everybody knows black dragons are the evilest of evil. Like they are so infamous for that reason.
Yeah.
Like black dragons are known to be the evilest of all. That's just common knowledge,
They're
really.
like they're not because
Like
they're chaotic. Like they're not even
yeah,
lawful like a red dragon, which is very like I'm going to take power here. Yeah, yeah. Black dragons are like I'm just gonna ruin everything and massacre whoever I feel
yeah,
like.
Black Dragon just revel in horror and destruction and just well, torture, really, is what it is, even.
Yeah.
Green dragons do too, to be fair. Like, green dragons love to psychologically torment and fuck with people or break them.
Yeah, but they're not like mass
They're
murderers.
not, yeah, they're not, they usually don't like to murder. They usually like to dominate and control from behind the scenes more. But either way, point being is, I think in this particular instance, he did have all of the necessary elements to justify his so-called leap. Like, it wasn't necessarily a leap, because it was like, yeah, I could see him knowing about dragons, specifically also green and black dragons, because yeah, they are not only pretty closely tied together because of their environmental things. As a ranger, I could absolutely see justification, even if he didn't, like, especially if he took dragons as his favored enemy. Even if he didn't, these terrains and things that he works in, I'm like, I could
No,
still justify it.
you could make the leap. I think I could see a DM being angry about making that leap, but the problem is like again, you picked the worst possible quest giver. You picked someone who's obviously suspicious, which doesn't even make sense for a green dragon.
Yeah.
It's just it all around like I'll give the OP credit. Like I don't necessarily think they went too far. I will say I wasn't at the table, and maybe the jump was a bit too much. Depending on what kind of context clues, depending on what the questions they asked, and you know what, maybe you did use some meta knowledge, and that's not necessarily the worst thing ever. But
No.
I think
And
what I would
he
say
apparently he
is
made checks too, though, to
yeah,
confirm it though. So
sure, but I would say, you know, if you're going to be playing in a game and you have knowledge, meta knowledge of how the game works, of stats, of monsters, of how things act, there's nothing wrong with using that information. But before you use that information, something that I think I've done pretty well in D&D, especially now with us doing this kind of stuff where we were making a lot of content about just actual game rules and mechanics, is that there there is, you know, ask yourself, look at your character sheet, what your backstory was, think for just a second and say, is this reasonable? And if
mm.
you're not sure, ask your
Then
DM for a
ask
quick
your
aside.
GM. Yes, ask
Ask
your
your DM for a
GM.
quick aside and be like, hey, this is how I
Would
feel.
my character
Explain
know
yourself.
this?
You know,
Like,
explain like, hey, I don't know if you've read my backstory. This is what I've written. You said it was okay. Is this
mhm.
something I would understand? If I have to make a check, I would be more than happy to. But is this a reasonable expectation for me? Because a GM might say, actually, looking at this again, I think this is a bit too much and I'd like to dial it down a little bit. And that's okay. That's the kind of conversations you want to have. And if those conversations didn't happen in a session zero because your DM was looking at 8 different character sheets and he missed something, that's okay, right? I
Mhm.
think we can all be adult enough to be like, all right, that's all right. Maybe this is an opportunity for you outside of combat in downtime and stuff like this to further your studies in those areas. Say you know just enough to maybe think something's wrong, but not enough to prove it. Well, now next time you're in town for a week, go to the library, study these creatures. Your character now has a new obsession of figuring out exactly, you know, what they don't know. But that's like I think that's a growing moment and a learning moment for both people involved without stepping on the toes of the DM because it's tough. It's tough to come up with a story that no one's gonna like immediately figure out because everybody thinks differently, everyone looks at it differently. I don't disagree with how OP handled this, but I hope that they went and looked at their sheet and thought for just a second, is this reasonable? Because it's tough because there is a version of this that we don't know all the details obviously where he just was like yeah I know that
Yeah.
and that's shitty, sorry, that's not how that's supposed to work. I would be mad as the DM if a character went like oh I know this, be like that's not, this is a collaborative, you don't just know things. Can we
Sure.
talk about it first, maybe
I
give me a
mean,
reason
but
and I'd
I
be
would
happy to
say
have that
though,
discussion.
if you already had a conversation with the GM previously about your backstory and about like
Oh no
what
no
you're
I yeah
doing
of
and
course,
everything, like I
but
think then that's
this guy seems
but
inexperienced, the DM.
yeah, I
So
agree. I think maybe OP like stepped on his toes a little bit,
oh,
perhaps.
100%.
Um, but the way the GM responded was absolutely not
No,
okay
no, 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 no.
either.
I'm not on the side of the GM at all. I
But
think
I
this
do
is a
understand what you're saying too. I agree in terms of like again, if the GM also just knows what your character is, like I think it because it can also be interesting if your character also just responds because it's like, oh yeah, I know my character would know this. Like that makes sense. Like we talked about this, and it can almost come out like in a very smooth and like seamless like role play moment where your character just know instead of having to obviously momentarily break immersion or character and be like, would my character know this, GM? Or like, because of this A, B, C, D, or whatever. It's like, yeah, your character would probably know this. It's like, okay, cool, and then, so you can just, I've definitely seen that, and I've even done that myself, where I'm just like, okay, yeah, my character would reasonably know this thing. Like, me and my GM talked about this previously. All right, cool. And it's
Yeah.
like, that can be nice. And so in
Oh
this
no, that's
particular,
great at a table where the DM knows what they're doing. I don't think
yeah,
this is the case.
probably not. But at the same token, though, I think one of the comments down below also says it, I think best too, is it's literally just like, DM sends level 3 party against 2 dragons. The only metagaming you should be doing is using that knowledge to just leave the game. Like,
Yeah.
that's I think a pretty accurate depiction of just like the meta knowledge of like, you're sending a level 3 party against any dragon that isn't a wormling.
Oh, and
Like,
yeah, I think that meta knowledge that certain monsters are just out of your league at low level is a meta knowledge shared by any decently experienced player anyway.
and
Like,
it's just like, again,
because
that's how
I've
you can tell
yeah.
when some fuckery is afoot. And you're like, I don't think this is gonna work. I don't know. Because again, maybe your GM is throwing you a red herring. Maybe he's tricking you. Maybe something else is gonna happen. Maybe he has other contingencies in place. But most of the time, you're definitely gonna be like, this seems ill-advised and stupid and doesn't make a lot of sense. So I hope you know what you're doing, GM, but let's be honest, most of the time they probably don't. But unless you have anything else to add to that at all, Sammy, I do believe that we can head on to the next story. This one is titled, When I Was the Horror Story and Nearly Caused a TPK by Being a Zealot, by Peach Cobblers. Hi, everyone. This is a story from my first D&D game I ever played. Well, manage your expectations, everybody. I had grown up playing D&D video games like the Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale series and reading the Forgotten Realms books, but it wasn't until my late 20s during the pandemic that I actually had a chance to play for the first time in an online game, doing the classic Lost Mines of Phandelver. I was super invested in making a character and wrote a very long and detailed backstory. I decided to play a very devout, and one might even say zealous, cleric of Lathander. He had grown up as a gladiator slave in Thay. Ooh, that's rough, buddy. And even more than a regular cleric of Lathander, hated undead and necromancy, believing they should be exterminated whenever possible. I was having a lot of fun with the roleplay aspect of that for the character, making sure that I didn't even use necromancy spells like inflict wounds.
Oh,
He's going real hardcore with it.
so
This
you couldn't use Revivify either.
technically not no revival spells he would be able to
Oh,
use if that
okay.
was the case.
I like this idea though.
This, I mean, it's unique. I mean, not unique, but it's intense, and so it's interesting from that perspective. It is a very, yes, intense and overly zealous approach. Anyway, there were 3 other party members and the GM. There was a ranger, a bard, and a sorcerer. For information on the Black Spider, who was the main villain, we sought out a banshee to see what she had to say, offering to trade an elven artifact statue for what she knew. Now, beforehand, knowing how my character felt about undead, the ranger asked my cleric, would I be okay with this plan? And this is where it all started to go downhill. I said, rather cryptically, I have a plan. I did not expand upon that, and no one else asked anything else about it. I don't know why anybody didn't. If you literally said it like
Yeah,
that,
I'm sorry. That's there's
at that point, I can't. At that point, I find it hard. At that point, I don't understand how people can be angry if they didn't ask you to expand. Like, you did not expand upon it. Like, it's still your fault. Yes, you shouldn't have done this.
yes.
But at the same token, you're not the only one at fault, because more people also should have asked more questions about that. Like, that should also have been done. Like, that's just okay. We got the information from the banshee that we wanted, and my character told her that he could offer her something even better than the statue. She asked what that was, and he said, and I quote, "Release you from the hell of your existence." And then I attacked, trying to hit her with a guiding bolt. This is where things went to hell in a handbasket, dear reader. The banshee used her scream. Yeah, she did. Of which 3 of us failed. immediately dropping to 0 HP. Luckily, however, we all had inspiration and re-rolled, and we all saved this time. But it still hurt quite a bit from the scream. Then the Banshee summoned 2 owl bears and teleported out of the cottage, running away. The fact that any of us survived that fight and my character still managed to kill the Banshee because I was able to put good AoE rolls from myself and the Sorcerer and healing magic between myself and the Bard and the range of Guiding Bolt, we're able to take them out and get out of there alive. Afterwards, the Ranger really let me have it. In character, but also sort of out of character. I think that's kind of fair and deserved a little bit, except for the fact that they didn't ask what your plan was. You literally said it cryptically. Anyone who has ever lived any amount of experience knows when somebody cryptically says, I have a plan.
I have a plan.
And don't say anything else, that's usually your cue to be like, what? Boy, what's the plan? What's your plan exactly? Please enlighten us what your plan is. Because afterwards, you know it's just going to be a shit show. You know that what they have planned is a simple shit show. That's it. That is what they have planned. Okay. So anyways, Ranger really let me have it, asks me why I did that. I, in character, tried to describe how banshees were the cursed souls of evil elves and explain that there was no such thing as a non-evil undead. Because at the time, I believed that it was canon in Forgotten Realms lore and such, but he wasn't having it. It's also not canon as well, just as a heads up. Undead creatures or beings are not all just wholly evil. Technically speaking, no creature is, right? Technically, there are always exceptions to every rule. To be fair, he's not technically wrong in that a lot of undead are usually evil. You know, vampires, zombies, liches, you know. Usually most things that are undead are kind of evil. But evilness also is a bit of a spectrum too, right? You can be evil as in you're just really selfish and self-serving and don't have a lot of empathy or sympathy. That technically constitutes as evil, technically speaking. But that doesn't mean that you're going to go out and start mass murdering people or torturing people or making suffering a thing. You know, you're just very self-obsessed, really. So yeah. Anywho, he was having none of what I was putting down. Later, after the session, I felt bad about what happened, putting everyone else in risk, and I wrote a very long in-character text roleplay, which I posted in the Discord chat, talking about my backstory in Thay and the threat of necromancy, and apologizing that I thought the Banshee would only hurt me, etc. And if I had died, that was fine, but I never wanted to risk anyone else. No one read it, or at least no one responded to it at all. That's a little unfortunate. I was mostly just embarrassed, realizing what I had done was kind of stupid, and guiltily I became a lot more reserved and quiet and passive during the rest of the campaign. Although, luckily, we only had a few more sessions before it was finished. The Ranger made a few more comments about my cleric being a murderer in character and to NPCs, and at that point I was just embarrassed and tired of the whole thing, so I let it slide. I actually quite liked the GM and all of the other players, and even the Ranger. And we had planned to play Icewind Dale next, though that ended up falling through from my end schedule-wise, so I couldn't join them. Overall, this was definitely a good learning experience for me as my first time playing D&D, despite me almost TPKing the party. It helped me realize that there are certain kinds of characters that are fun in theory, but in practice, not a good fit for a cooperative, team-based game. I've become a much better player and as well as a GM since then. And I know what I made to myself after that campaign. Don't play zealots and don't piss off banshees. In post. OP, you have my immense respect, my friend. Well done. You did very well here with this. Like, yes, and you know what? Again, I really love your enthusiasm. That's amazing. You have a lot of lore and you love to, again, same thing as before. You know, you applied a certain amount of metagaming, like logic, I guess people could say, to your character, but it also made sense to a certain extent in regards to, yeah, what your character would also just know of the lore. Because also, to be fair, everybody, in terms of metagaming, if you've read books or read the lore of D&D, that is lore that's actually supposed to be in the game. Like it is. There are books that your character and the people of that world, like the thing that you read is also usually things that can be read in the actual world too, if your GM is running a game with those same basic rules and lore and buildup. So, or background, I should say, excuse me. Um, so I mean, with this, again, this is why running a zealot character, a exceedingly extremely religious character, is very difficult, right? Because it shows you, because this is a primarily, as it says, a team-focused cooperative game, running somebody who is so devoutly, zealotlessly religious or doggedly in whatever their belief is, whether it be religion or even if it's just, even if you're a normal fighter who just believes in like everybody, nobody can be trusted or everybody's, a menace, like if you don't have the ability to make compromise and don't have the ability to consider your other party members, welfare and uh, everything as well, like you can't really play then. That's not how you play the game, and you can't play it well. And so,
Yeah.
like Sammy said, it's an incredibly interesting character for its intensity. Everybody likes intensity, right? Intensity can be very interesting and compelling initially, or at least, when you think it can be. But the issue being is an actual practical application and play, it becomes far more difficult because how do you keep to the spirit of that intensity of your character's beliefs and behavior while still then also compromising quite often to work with the rest of your party and players, and not create so much unfortunate conflict or moments. It's hard, man. It is an incredibly hard thing to do, and I think it certainly is a thing that only really experienced veteran players with a equally as experienced and trusted group could possibly pull off such a thing. Like your fellow players and GM have to also trust you implicitly for this to even really be a possibility of you being able to
It's
run
a
it.
it's a tough, like, I get it. I get sticking to your guns. I think a cleric would also understand that maybe removing yourself from the situation would have been better than risking your entire party. And no offense, but I don't know in what world you thought a banshee would just attack you and not the rest of the people that you're with. Which I think you've learned from that experience, so I'm not gonna, uh, ding you too much for it. I think it's one of those things like holding on to your beliefs is great until it fucks over everybody in your party. Um, and like not to say that you still can't have issues with it. Like there's 100% when that was first brought up, a different way to role play that. Instead of being like, oh, I have a plan, like nobody knows what the fuck you're talking about. I would say more so maybe being just vehemently opposed to working with this person at all would be a better way to role play this than to wait till you get there to attack them. If you want my honest opinion, I
Well, I
think.
mean, that's what I mean. Like there were many mistakes made all around, right? Like in terms of again, once he
Oh, sure.
said, "I have a plan,"
I
that
have a
should have
plan,
been this.
Arthur.
That should have been discussed immediately. That should not. You should not enact plans unless you know for a fact that it's like actually helpful or conducive to like protect your friends overall. Like this was
Yeah.
just you being selfish and attacking the band, like literally thinking like, well, I thought the banshee would just attack me, and it's like, sure, but you know what banshees do? They scream mostly, and screams are not really things you can just direct towards one person alone necessarily. Um, and then on top of that, you almost got everybody killed, and then she summoned like two owl bears, and then ran away, and you still wanted to kill her, like.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, all right, fuck this shit, let's leave, let's get the hell out of here. Like, yeah, again, overall, it was clear that OP, what you were a bit selfish here, but you also acknowledged it though. Like, you literally wrote this up. You are the problem player here. Oh, hang on a second. I think my cat is stuck in the closet. Jesus. Oh, you idiot. I keep telling you to stop trying to go in there when it's open because you get your ass stuck just like that. Anywho, it is an unfortunate thing, but you OP, you still had the balls and the strength to acknowledge your mistakes, and not only that, but learn from them. Even like you clearly had remorse from this. Like you said, you felt embarrassed and you were able to look back on it like almost immediately and be like, yeah, I felt guilty and I kind of did a selfish thing there. And you put out this whole your backstory thing or whatever. Nobody responded to it. I'll be honest, that kind of sucks. Like I don't know why they aren't engaging with you more. Like I don't know why they didn't do that, because that's also on them. It's like when you said you had a plan, when you said all this, like why aren't they engaging more? Why aren't they asking more questions? Why aren't they like, like I don't know. It like honestly, OP, I think it may have been okay that you. I mean, I appreciate, and I can say again, you say you love these people, you love the GM and the other players, even the Ranger, and that's great. I've never played with them before, so I can't say for certain. But it might just be good that maybe you weren't with them anymore. I don't know. Again, I don't want to say that for sure because I don't know. I don't have enough context yet. But it definitely sounds like like you said, you've become a much better player and GM since then. You're having a good time. I hope that you were able to find plenty of great games since then where you can really, exercise and really stretch your role play muscles and your meta knowledge too. Because it's fun and cool to use that knowledge in game. That's another aspect, right? Like it feels good when you're like, oh my God, I read this and it's not just useless information that's just floating around in my skull now. Like I can actually apply it and use it in a cool, effective manner. And of course, though, you have to be careful, right? As with everything, moderation and within reason. Like, you can't just start assuming and start blind shit, for you. You need to be able to be like, all right, I need to know when my character might legitimately know something and when they might legitimately not. And it's a difficult one. It's a difficult dance to kind of play at, but you got to, just as with anything, just do your best. If you fuck up, just apologize. Just say, I'm sorry, my bad. I'll try to tone it back, and if at any point I'm unsure, or if you feel like my character wouldn't know this, then we can take it back. I apologize for that. Like it's okay. Just transparency, I think, is always the best policy for most things. Yeah, thanks, bud. I appreciate you supporting that. Anywho, let's move on to the next one, shall we? The final one of the day. Go ahead and take it away, Sammy.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit unfortunate. There is an essay warning.
This gets a little intense. It's not super explicit, but just even the implication
Yeah, the implications are rough
is
and terrible.
pretty explicit. So hang on to your underwear, y'all. Buckle your seatbelts. Here we go.
This is I Lavender Lathander, which is a great screen name. The first and last time I'll ever play a bard. Um, Edit, when I originally shared this with other people, they just laughed me off and said it came with the class. I know that isn't true now, but the class is just tainted for me. I forgot to include the part in the post originally, and that's my bad. Sorry for the confusion. Obligatory posting on a throwaway because I'd rather not have this story connected to my main channel for reasons that will become obvious. I've always been a fan of the game, though never a player. I have the luxury of a job with long hours, chill management, and a plethora of downtime. I'd spend some of these nights watching other people play, and that's when I discovered channels like Crit Crab, Den of the Drake, Crispy's Tavern, and everyone's favorite good boy D&D Dodge. Being a longtime fan of these channels, I think I finally found the courage to share my own horror story. Trigger warning: the horror of this story involves an underage NPC. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't read further. After talking to a few friends on an online game I used to play, let's just call it Run Escape, um, they got to laughing about, or they got to talking about a D&D group that had been going on via Discord, and how disappointed they were because this long-running campaign was about to die out due to the fact that they could not seem to get new players to stick around. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Obvious red flag, run away, but I really wanted to play. After I expressed my interest and my lack of experience, to my surprise, they invited me without so much as an interview with the DM.
Oh, because they're desperate, bro. They are desperate.
Extremely. Um, the setting took place in a world called Exandria. I later found out this is where Critical Role bases its games out of. Our party was comprised of mercenaries. hired to find Vox Machina and relieve them of the vestiges of divergence, so they could be stored under lock and key, lest they be used to. Oh, I don't really get that. Basically, take the power away from them. Seize power? Interesting, right? I thought so too. Too bad nothing ever came of it. During my session 0, DM asked what kind of class I'm willing to play. I explained to him that I was inexperienced and would play any role that would best fit the party. The conversation went as follows. DM, you can pick any class you want, but why don't you start out with a spellcaster? Normally I'd have you started as a paladin, but we already have one. Me, well, I don't really understand combat. Are there any classes that use more roleplay? I have a good idea of how skill checks work. Sure, you can play a bard. I actually have a character sheet written up for one if you want it. Are you okay with using a pre-made backstory? Me, yeah, I don't have an issue with that. DM, awesome. I'm gonna have you sit this game out, spend the week reading over it, and you'll be ready to join us next time. I was over the moon. It was finally happening. I get to roll dice, and the best part, I get to be the goofball. That was until I actually read the backstory. Oh, I won't bore you by writing the whole thing out, but to summarize, the guy was a changeling eloquence bard who spent his life living amongst various families while impersonating the dearly departed. Jesus Christ.
Yep.
He'd use people up for all they were worth or until he got caught and then move along. Not really my thing, but okay. Bards are supposed to be huge flirts, right? As time passes, sessions go on, I start getting a little bit better at the game. I started taking liberties with the character, and this is where the horror story starts. The party and I are camped out after a successful battle. My character is playing music while the rest go about their own business. The DM. OP, you notice a woman approaching the campfire, seemingly attracted by your song. She introduces herself as Calliope and asks if she may sit near the
Calliope.
flame. It's there's like 8. They're all technically correct pronunciation.
I
Look it
know,
up.
right?
No, like legitimately, I'm not messing around. There's a podcast.
Oh, I know. No, believe me, I
Yeah,
know. Calliope,
all of it.
Calliope, yeah.
Calliope. Yeah. She asks if she may sit near the flames as to enjoy the warmth and your song. Me. I continue playing my song, but not in acceptance. As I finish the song, I inform her anybody is welcome by my flame, so long as you come in peace. DM, you notice the woman's gaze hasn't left you since she sat down. Me, can I sneak a few glances at her as I play to see if I notice anything interesting? DM, you can't be sure, but she seems young. You notice her clothes are worn and wet and revealing in certain areas. This girl has clearly been on her own, and luck has not been on her side for some time. Me, oh, you poor thing. I'm sorry. Here, let's get you out of those wet clothes before you catch your death. You can change over here there by that tree. DM, do you ask her age? Me, that's the furthest thing from my mind right now. She's in dire need of warmth. DM, do you tell her that? Me, of course. Does she take the cloak? DM, she does. Make an insight check. I roll and I pass. As she takes your cloak, you see a hint of fear in her eyes. She goes behind the tree and never returns. What do you do? Me, I inform the party that our friend hasn't returned in a while and we should probably go look for her. DM, your party is not in camp with you. It occurs to you that in the time you've been talking with the girl, you don't remember hearing a peep from your friends. It's likely they're off doing their own thing. You seek her out on your own. Me, against better judgment, yes, I can't leave her to the elements. There's something wrong here. The DM smiles and asks me to make a survival check. I roll low, so he tells me it takes much longer than it should have, but eventually I find the girl and my party. Trigger warning, the rest of this post includes assault on an NPC who is revealed to be a minor. I won't go into detail, but I walk in on my party attacking the girl while she is tied down on a large flat rock. They notice me and say, we're taking turns. Me out of character. What the hell, guys? Seriously, no. Ranger. Oh, come on, Bard. We couldn't just let you have all the fun. Come on, we warmed her up for you. Jesus Christ. Me. I'd like to cast Hypnotic Pattern to see if I can subdue everyone. The DM. No infighting. Me. I'm not attacking them. I'm just trying to subdue them. DM. Same thing. Find a way to rectify the situation without attacking your friends. Me. They're assaulting this poor girl. They're not my friends. DM. You can choose to split from the party, but understand there will be consequences. Do you want to proceed? Me. Fine, whatever. I don't care. Can I cast my spell? DM. Okay, roll Inish. Wizard. I cast Counterspell. DM. OP, your spell has been nullified. Wizard. I cast Enthrall on OP. DM. OP, make a Wisdom save. I roll my Wisdom save and fail. Wizard. I command you to do something very awful to the girl that I won't repeat. I'm shocked. I don't even know how to react to this, but it only gets worse. The wizard also casts Modify Memory on the girl. She fails her save, and he tells her that after I gave her my coat, I took her behind the tree and had my way with her. They keep me subdued until the town guard arrives and arrests me. I'm sure at this point you're wondering, why didn't I just pack up my crap and leave? I don't know. Maybe some part of me thought this was just some big joke. I'd find out we were all under some sort of devil charm or something. They roleplay the entire trial. The girl takes the stand, reveals her to be my 15-year-old daughter, who sought me out after her mother had died of the plague. She tells the court Her age was the farthest thing from your mind. Your main concern was giving her warmth. I'm found guilty and executed. DM, I think that's where we'll end it today. Great job, OP. You took it like a champ. You have a week to roll a new character. Me? Roll a new character? DM, well, yeah, the bard is dead, and no one's resurrecting that piece of crap. Me, but he was innocent, and the party did all that. DM, did they? I left the voice call I
That's
left for
my
them.
favorite part right
And the
there.
clan and the online game I met
Yeah,
those guys in.
Dad.
It would be 4 years before I'd play again, but I'll never play a bard again. TLDR, party of losers recruits me only to ultimately make me witness their sick fantasy and make me the villain. The top comment. I don't feel like the bard class was the problem here.
Yeah, no. Like this I'll so right off the bat, what I'll say about this is it seemed to me like they were kind of just playing evil characters almost right away. Like when literally the intention of the campaign is to steal Vox Machina's vestiges of divergence away from them. That already says to me, like even though you're saying like, oh well, in case they use it to seize power, it's not really a thing that they do though. So like if at least if you're running it, in world to begin with. So it seems unlikely that you guys are the good guys here. Just with that premise alone, I'm like, I think you guys are already pretty evil. Then it's 100% confirmed after this absolute cluster F of a degenerate crap. Like, good Lord, dude. Like, again, I don't know what goes through people's heads when they do shit like this. I don't know if they think it's funny because it's just so horrendous and crazy that their minds are incapable of actually being able to to comprehend it in reality. And so they're just like, it's hilarious because it's just so ridiculous. It's like, no, this shit happens. It's happened before. It's not an uncommon thing that's happened. Like, this is just straight effed up. What's wrong with and I will say, obviously, OP was a bit of an idiot. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm gonna be straight up. OP was a bit dumb because yeah, they really should not, and not even from the beginning, right? Sure, I'm all about giving shit chances, right? Oh, we're having trouble keeping players, da 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 da. You can join, whatever. Sure, okay, you gave it a shot. I'm not above giving shit a shot because you just never know. You never know until you really get in there. You have a pretty good idea. You have a pretty good idea, but you just never know for certain. Fine. You got in there, you played the game. The GM gave you a really kind of weird. Again, your character is not a good person. They're not a good person. They seem pretty evil if they're literally a con man or con person who pretends to be the dead relatives of people and slowly sucks them dry of all of their whatever and then runs away and moves on to the next thing. Like that. That's not a good person. So cool. Awesome. Um Yeah, honestly, like it seemed pretty clear just from jump that, and I will say again, OP was also stupid, kind of, and I'm sorry to say it, when he was interacting with the woman. It's like literally the way that the GM is phrasing shit that should have already been a red flag on like, do you ask her age? Why are you asking me that question? Why are you like why would OP just be like, that's the furthest thing from my mind right now when the GM literally asks you that question? That's like the same thing as like a GM going like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" Like, if he's asking you that question, you should maybe inquire or take that question a bit more seriously and inquire, well, why are you asking that question? Is there a particular reason why? I mean, I'm not nothing that I'm doing should have anything to do with her age. Like, why are you asking me that question, GM? Because that's suspicious as fuck, and I don't like that. That raises all kinds of warning flags and signs right now for me. Like, same thing as like the last story we read. Why aren't people asking questions? You don't have to immediately leave. Sure, don't make assumptions. Sure, whatever. Fair enough. But ask some motherfucking questions, please. Please. Just ask a question. Just say why. Just ask why. Why? Our most favorite word on this channel. Why? Why are you asking me that? Why should I need to know her age? And then literally, he then asks her, like when he says, that's the furthest thing from my Ryan right now. She's in dire need of warmth. He's like, did you tell her that? Why did you ask me if I told her that? Like, what is this? What is this? Also, thing being is if he's a bard, you're telling me he doesn't have magic that can maybe magically help her to get warm and dry right here at the fire? Like, why is he telling her to go change behind a whatever? Just dry her off and then give her your cloak anyway. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? I don't know what we're doing here. And I get it. It's his first time ever playing. I get it. I don't know. For me, I would just find that shit, even if it was my first time doing anything, I would just find the way that the GM is speaking weird and strange. On top of the fact that when she leaves and she says she has a hint of fear in her eyes, okay, if she's frightened, why ask her? Why are you frightened? What's going on? What's wrong? Are people after you? What's going on? He just lets her go. And then he's like, oh, well, I'm going to talk to my party. And the GM is like, oh, the party isn't in the camp with you. How the fuck did all these motherfuckers get up and leave without me noticing them at all? That doesn't make any goddamn sense. What?
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Did they all roll stealth checks beyond what I was capable? Like, really? Are you sure about that? You sure about that? Nah, son, nah. And even when the GM finally finishes it all, he's like, hey, good job, OP. You took it like a champ. This seemed like almost like it was like a canonized ritual, where it was literally like or a hazing ritual where you're hazing somebody. They join up and you just do some
100% what it sounded like.
Some effed up shit to them, and you're like, hey, you know what? We can trust you now because you took this effed up shit to the A like a champ. Good for you, bud. You're in the club. And it's like, absolutely not, bro. You can go F yourselves, man. No, 100% no. Screw off. Like, yeah, this shit, I don't know. Like, I have, I don't know. I have a problem. And now, apparently, it's so traumatic that OP never wants to play a bard ever again. Even though being the bard, that didn't do anything. Like being a bard had nothing to do with what happened. Like, so that's unfortunate. I don't know. I hate it. I hate it. I hate everything that's happened here. These I don't know. This whole thing is just absolutely disgusting to me, deplorable. I just don't know why people do this. I don't know why they do this. I don't know what their mindset is when they think of this shit, when it's just like just doing the worst terrible shit ever. Like,
yeah, it's not. I don't know. I don't really get it. Again, there were so many flags.
I mean, so they misused the spell enthrall. That's not what the spell enthrall does. Like, there is like, unless you use dominate person, and even then, like, you this is just
It's just not good.
good golly gosh damn, bro. Again, what level were they? Because if dude literally has modify memory, that's a 5th level spell, right? I think 5th level, maybe 6th level. I think it's 5th level. So they have to at least be level 9 then, right? Or level 8, I think. Level 7 or level 8, I think actually is where 5th spells first come into play. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like this. I mean, another thing too that I don't understand is if OP was gonna fight the party, like he doesn't have counterspell apparently to counterspell the wizard's counterspell. He didn't know how like enthrall works. I don't, if you're gonna fight the party, you should know what the hell you're doing if you're gonna do that. Like, again, I don't know. I don't know. OP just made a lot of stupid decisions. Like I like it's really hard for me to like to just solely be like, because again, like it was just like OP, he just shouldn't, yeah, just he just made like bad decision after bad decision. And it's so hard for me to just be like, because I'm not trying to victim blame necessarily. It's just, it's like, bro, like handle shit better, dude. Like I don't fucking know.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, man. But that's life sometimes, I guess, and that's where we're leaving it off, I think, for today, y'all, on this unfortunate, sad kind of ending vibe. Please leave a comment down below what you guys think of this, in terms of like how you felt about all of the stories that we read up to this point, your thoughts on maybe how they could be handled better, on, what you would have done or whatever. We love to hear it. We appreciate y'all so much again for any of the support you can offer. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you're never late for any of our uploads. We usually upload a video every Wednesday. So we hope to see you guys next week at that time when we dive back down into the archive. Bye, y'all. Have a good rest of your day.